Everyone got back early last night to your rooms and bright night and Bushdale this morning to start. I'm hoping that everyone had a chance to go to your trade show this morning. If you put your name in any draw at any exhibitor booths at this trade show, the names of the winners will be posted at the west end of the hall of ITC building near the main entrance. The winner, before we begin, we'll want to recognize the sponsors for this morning's session. WSP for coffee in the convention hall. SaskTel for today's keynote speaker. CIBC Wood Gundy for tonight's banquet. Plains Mainstream Canada for tonight's entertainment. Jack Como and Vic Perling for Financial Services for today's video services. CP and Fort Distributors for the dialogue sessions with the cabinet ministers, and Weldo Bales for the coffee in the trade show. Just a friendly reminder, you can purchase your lunch tickets at the Everest Place staff from the staff in the lobby. They're $20 each, sold from 9 o'clock this morning to 1 p.m. today. Okay, to start off this morning, with great pleasure, I'd like to introduce you to Andrea Robertson, CEO of STARS, to come forward and say a few words on behalf of STARS. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you. Good morning. How's everybody? So who was at the open house at the STARS base this week? Couple of hands. So there was no helicopter there, as for those of you that came out to visit. And I was just getting an update from our crew that indeed we were on a very complicated call, that the result was very good. So we may not have had a helicopter there, but indeed that's why I'm standing here today. SARM has been an unbelievable supporter through all of you. And we've actually passed the $2 million mark of support. So, yeah. So unbelievable. And, you know, and I thank you for inviting us to spend just a couple of minutes with you and to share a few words. What I'd say is it's difficult to know how to say thank you for that. I often find I'm up here talking about the number of missions we've flown, or when you see the helicopter in the sky, that you know that you're responsible for putting us there. We're very fortunate in this province to have a great deal of government support, but your support actually makes us exceptional. When you think about that helicopter in the sky, you know that it's an intensive care unit coming to care for you. The things that you might not know about STARS is our pilots fly with night vision goggles, which makes them very safe. We're the first program in Canada that as a civilian organization outside the military that had that technology. You gave us that technology through your support. Our crew fly with things like blood, and you're going to hear a little bit about more about that. That was created by a couple of people right here in Regina, and now that's something that we offer across Western Canada, created here through your support. So there are just really incredible things about us that I think that in general people don't know. Through your support, Reagan's going to speak to you, she's one of our educators. One of the things we do at STARS is we do an internal competition so that we can go to an international competition with our crew and compete against people providing critical care throughout North America. And every time we've sent a crew, this year we sent a crew from Saskatchewan, every time we've gone, we've placed in the top 3 of that international competition. This year, we came second. On the world stage, you think, you know, we're just this little place in Canada, and all we're trying to do is be available for that next patient who needs us, which was indeed just the other day when you were visiting our base. But you think about, we have a young guy that we call a young man from Saskatchewan. His name's DJ LaFrance. He's one of our engineers, and he won an international award for being an incredible engineer. And so your support doesn't make us just available. It does make us exceptional. So on behalf of everybody at STARS, I want to say a gigantic thank you for that. It's my absolute pleasure to actually introduce a couple of people that will describe way more interestingly than I ever could what it is we actually do. And I'm going to start with Reagan Gardner. She's one of our most exceptional nurses. Flight nurse Reagan.
Good morning. Thank you for having us today. So my name is Reagan. I'm a flight nurse and also the clinical educator with STARS here in Regina. I've been fortunate to be with the STARS team since our inception 6 years ago. But my first glimpse of STARS was when I worked as an ER nurse in Edmonton. I was at one of the major trauma centers, and STARS would regularly bring in the most critically ill and injured patients, and I thought, I want to be a STARS nurse when I grow up. My husband and I decided to return back to live in Saskatchewan where I had grown up, and I thought that maybe my dream to work at STARS wouldn't come true. I worked in emergency in Regina here, and it was hard to watch patients come in from the rural centers, and they were critically injured, and they had to ride for hours in an ambulance over our roads, which you may have driven on, and I just thought, I wish that STARS was here. I had really taken it for granted when I worked in Alberta. Little did I know, Rod Gantifor was working hard in the background to make this a reality. And here we are, nearly 6 years later, with more than 4,500 missions to over 500 communities in Saskatchewan. So I'm lucky, I have the greatest job in the world, and I'd love to tell you a little bit about that. Our donors, they know they're supporting the mission. They see the red helicopter, but I think there's some value in knowing about some of the other pieces of the puzzle that occur to enable that mission. One of these components is our continuing education for our medical crews. So aside from flying as a nurse, I also facilitate the approximately 100 hours of education that our medical crew participate in each year. We are so fortunate to have a program that is led by our critical care physicians and other experts in the field. This education is based on the latest innovation and research and is constantly adapting. The STARS education program is regarded as one of the very best out there. It's used as a benchmark among other organizations. Although this might sound to you like a lot of time to ask of our crew each year, the caliber of education entices advanced care paramedics and critical care nurses to join STARS. These 100 hours are divided among different types of education delivery. Our crews complete online education modules each month. They attend concentrated full-day courses focusing on critical care in adult and pediatric patients, trauma management, cardiac care, and airway and ventilation management. So why does this matter to you? I would like to share an example with you of how the STARS training program makes a direct impact on patients' lives. Back in 2012, one of our transport physicians presented during our monthly education rounds. He was presenting on a brand new published paper that talked about the management of trauma with life-threatening bleeding. The next day, my partner and I were dispatched out for an ATV accident. When we met with our patient in the back of the rural ground ambulance, it was clear that she was critically injured and unstable. Fresh on our minds from the night before, it was clear that being able to provide a blood transfusion to this patient would be her best chance at survival. While my partner and I worked to stabilize this patient, our Emergency Link Center worked with our transport physician and pilots to coordinate the pickup of blood products from the nearby Arcola Hospital. This patient has made a full recovery and is part of our STARS family today as a VIP, possibly thanks to the quick recognition of her need for a blood transfusion. This specific mission was also the impetus for Regina being the first rotor wing transport service here to carry blood on board. And as Andrea mentioned, that's now spread across Western Canada, and I cannot tell you how many lives that has likely saved. There's countless stories from medical crews of being in the midst of a complicated resuscitation, and you revert back to your monthly high-fidelity simulation session, and you're confident you have the tools to give this person their best fighting chance at survival. These simulation sessions are facilitated by our physicians and education team. I like to say I play with robots for a living. We use mannequins that are as close to real life as we can get. They blink, talk, cry, breathe, and actually react to medications and interventions. Each base has a fleet of these mannequins at a cost of approximately $250,000 per fleet. High fidelity simulation allows our teams to fine-tune their medical skills, resuscitation, and communication. And then we have our mobile education unit. Maybe in your community you've seen the big red RV come out, filled also with high fidelity mannequins that provides critical care training and education to everyone in your community. So the attendees can include your local EMS, your first responders, the nurses, physicians. We all know that you can't close your hospital for a day to send all your staff into Regina or Saskatoon to have training. So we come out free of charge. Thank you to our generous sponsors who provide this. So even though you may not see the red helicopter in your town, the effects of the STARS education program are seen throughout the province and are available to every patient. And patients are at the center of everything we do. Meeting them after they've recovered from their accident is the most rewarding part of our job. In a moment, we're just going to share a video with you that highlights some of our STARS very important patients. We like to call them our VIPs. And then one of our very courageous VIPs, Chad Rogers, will share his story with you, a prime example of how your support helps us. In closing, we would like to give SARM a huge thank you for your continuing support that allows us to provide not only the mission, but all of the other pieces that build the foundation for each patient's care and an improved chance for a positive outcome. You are the reason we are able to continue to offer these levels of opportunities to our medical staff and the communities of Saskatchewan. When you support STARS, you ride along with us on every mission. You put the most advanced tools in our hands. You help ensure our crew receives the top training. The courage to fight for life is in every person. Only together can we ensure that each person who needs emergency medical care receives it. With you by our side, we are all STARS. Thank you.
I ran over myself with a tractor and baler.
And instead of staying on the pavement, hit the gravel, and we flipped 3 times.
I missed the trajectory. I just kind of landed right on the ground.
So she had a traumatic brain injury with multiple skull fractures.
Next thing we know, there's a tree that fell on both of us.
When I was a baby, I got hurt, and then they picked me up.
And they flew down and came and picked me up and dropped me off at this children's hospital.
Honestly, without STARS, I don't know where I would be today.
It was extremely important. It was a very pivotal part of my recovery and getting me to the hospital.
I don't think I'd be sitting here now if it wasn't for STARS.
I don't know where I'd be or how I'd be if it wasn't for them.
It's just that second chance in someone's life when they don't have any hope or anything. STARS is there for them.
I have 4 young boys, so for us it means that we get to stay together as a family.
Because of STARS, I actually get to have my miracle baby.
It's an amazing thing these guys do. These are they're the best of the best.
It's just an organization that boggles the mind.
We need STARS. It is an absolute essential service.
They're amazing. They saved my life.
They saved my life.
STARS saved my life.
Thanks for saving my life.
I owe my life to STARS.
I owe my life to them.
What do you say to somebody who saved your life? That's been an ongoing question with me. And there's nothing I can say to say thank you enough.
Hello everyone, my name is Chad Rogers. I grew up on a small mixed farm and recently moved back home to help on the farm. I work at Young's Equipment as a parts manager in Assiniboia, and when I'm not at work with my family or at the farm, I love to ride my Harley or ATV. Since moving back, my wife and I have moved into a new home, welcomed our first child, and reacquainted with some old friends. But in a blink of an eye, this would all be in jeopardy. Thursday, June 25th, 2014 started out like most days. My family and I had recently got back from our annual camping trip, and I was ready to start haying. Dad had called and had the baler ready to go, and so was the hay. I said goodbye to my wife Sonia and our 3-month-old daughter Cambry, and traveled to the farm excited to start another haying season on our farm. We'd cut some of our pasture land for hay that year, and it was on some rolling land north of Maisonade. I reached the pasture and bailed my way to a fence gate that I needed to go through to get to the hay meadow. I was pointed downhill towards the gate and knew I needed to park differently as the emergency brake was weak on the tractor. I parked pointing away from me, opened the gate, and just as I arrived at the gate, I heard the click of the emergency brake letting go. I turned to see the tractor start rolling down the hill towards our dugout. I immediately took off running towards the tractor. I vividly remember telling myself that this was a horrible idea. At this point, the tractor and half-full baler were rolling quite quickly, and apparently I'm not as fast as I thought it was. I hit the stairs with one foot but couldn't keep up, and I ended up halfway under the large tractor tire, and it rolled over my midsection. The tractor itself probably weighed close to 15,000 pounds, and the baler hit me, which weighed probably close to 3,000. After the dust settled, I remember trying to move my feet to make sure I wasn't paralyzed, and then I remember checking for blood and not finding that I was bleeding. This to me was good news. I never once thought about internal bleeding, which I would find out later would be a huge problem. So after my initial survey of the situation, I knew I needed to get help and felt for my cell phone. Luckily, it was still in my jeans pocket. If I didn't have the phone with me or have it still work, I don't know that I would be here today telling you this story. The tractor ended up probably 200 yards down the hill in the water resting against a fence post. And I don't know that I would have had the strength to get to my phone. And Dad was not scheduled to come up for a couple hours. I found my phone and texted my mom. The phone would not send unless I held my hand up as high as I could get it. I was in a bad service area. A few more feet down the hill, and my phone may not have worked. Don't ask me why I texted or not called, but I did. I remember the text in my mind to this day. Need ambulance. There was no response. I sent another text, Mom, nothing, and a third, quick. At this point, the weird feeling had turned to severe pain. I was getting worse by the second. Mom had not replied because she had been on the phone with 911. Shortly after, there started to be a flurry of activity as the local responders from Mossbank showed up, who were friends and neighbors. I remember answering some questions, and they were doing an initial check and hooked up some oxygen. After the EMTs arrived, they gave me some laughing gas, and they prepared to get me on the spinal board and in the ambulance. I was now in severe pain and inhaled as much gas as I could get. I remember the trip into the ambulance, as to me it felt like they were on a dead sprint. We were loaded and on our way out of the pasture, which was a terrible trip. We headed to Moose Jaw, and another ambulance was called, and we met halfway to Moose Jaw. They struggled to get IV lines in me, and it felt like an eternity. I was bleeding internally badly, and the emergency doctor in Moose Jaw made the decision to literally tie my pelvis together with a bed sheet, as they'd put 3 units of blood in and my blood pressure was still dropping. I am told that Dr. Miller's bedsheet idea was a huge factor in keeping me alive until STARS could arrive to transport me to Regina for emergency surgery. Once STARS crew arrived, they did their assessment. They gave me 2 more units of blood as my blood pressure was still low and my heart rate was elevated. I was in need of more help soon. One of the major things that STARS did for me is that they had a specialized pelvic brace on board the aircraft, and the hospital did not. That to me was a real eye-opener as to one of the many amazing things STARS has to offer. Other than the specialized brace, STARS also provided me the time I needed to survive. The transport time from Moose Jaw to Regina Hospital, I am told, is roughly 15 to 16 minutes. On the road would have been 60 minutes plus. This gave me the extra time I needed to get the emergency surgery. The next memory was waking up in the IC room in Regina with 2 threaded rods sticking out of my hips. The surgeon had placed external fixators to temporarily pull the 2 halves of my pelvis back together. A few days later, I was in for another surgery in Saskatoon to piece together the shattered parts of my pelvis. The surgeon had placed 9 screws and multiple plates to keep everything as stable as they could. Altogether, my injuries were a complete open book fracture of the pelvis, shattered pelvis, a cracked L20 vertebrae, and a 75% tear of my MCL, and internal bleeding that took 9 units of blood in total. to this day, I do not know how I didn't receive any further injuries. A week after my last surgery, we started physio, which was for me was to sit up. I know it may not sound like much, but after being on your back for 2 weeks, it was very difficult. You become dizzy and the pain was excruciating. Sitting progressed from a matter of minutes to hours, and it continued to get longer and longer. I then started basic leg exercises, which took every ounce of strength I had. With the help of my wife, we did as many exercises and as often as I could. This was my only rehab, and I would be unable to do until I was from bed rest for 3 months. After 6 weeks in the hospital and 6 weeks at home, I was ready to start the next phase of recovery. We were off to Saskatoon to finally get the external fixators off, and 5 days later I was scheduled for my first physio appointment. I've never been more terrified to stand up. All along my recovery, the front of my pelvis had shown no signs of healing, and that weighed heavily on my mind. I rolled the wheelchair over to the end of the bars to assist people walking, put my hands down, and up I went. No pain in my hips, which was great, but my knees and ankles were in tough shape. I managed to walk 20 feet, which seemed like a mile that day, but I was so happy for the things to come. Every day, my progress seemed to double. If I wasn't at physio, Dad would drive in from the farm to assist me walking up and down my hallway. From there, it was off to the local event center to walk the halls. I went from a walker to a wheeled walker to a cane in a matter of a few weeks. My accident happened on June 25th, and by November I was in the gym walking 30 minutes on the treadmill and doing a full weightlifting regime. By December, I was without a cane, and Christmas Day was 6 months from the accident. Needless to say, that Christmas was probably the best. So thanks to STARS for their expert pilots, nurses, medics, and specialized equipment. My wife has her husband, my daughter has her dad. We welcomed our son in January, and my parents and sisters still have me. Since my accident, I've often asked myself what we did in critical emergency situations before we had STARS, and the only answer I can come up with is that people died or did not get the chance of recovery that I had. So thank you to my crew, Mac, Darren, Jason, and Andrew. Thank you to Andrea and Reagan and the rest of the STARS team for all you do. And thank you to all the sponsors like SARM and all of its members. Because of your continued support, others like me get a second chance at life. Thank you.